Welcome everyone. I'm Kokwana Elta. I hope everyone is fine and safe at home. People, we should be really safe. Yeah, this third wave is so dangerous and it's taking most of us. So by God's grace, we have to be safe, adhere to those rules, right?
Yeah.
So we hear people talking about honey soap, beeswax, so many things, that reminds us of our olden school days when we learn about bees, and we never had that interest. So today I'm joined by experts of beekeeping, Mr. Ditema and Keith. Tell us whatever you want to tell us. After that, we'll ask some questions and then comment and see what we can do.
I was born in Wales, between Akenhook and Castile. But I grew up in Benoni. And when I got here, there were opportunities to go to school. I studied and then did my research work in biochemistry. And I got my PhD. I taught at a college, and whilst at college, I started suffering from hay fever. That's my story of how I got into beekeeping. I suffered badly from hay fever, and someone at college said to me, "Why not try your local honey?" And somehow the hay fever became a little bit better. So I decided, why not produce your own honey? I went to training, and then I got my first my first hive, my first colony. Then I went to 40 colonies of bees at one stage, but now I've sort of come down to 14, which is a bit manageable, because when you have a box of honey and it weighs something like 60 pounds, it's very heavy. I produce candles. You can see the type of thing I produce. That's a candle. The one that always gets people excited is this kind of candle, and there's the wig at the top. They're bespoke candles. So I also produce body lotions, lip balms, body creams, and bespoke cakes of soap. I teach beekeeping. I go around the world, different parts of the world, just to try and help people to do something about bees. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chilwane. Mr. Mageza, will you perhaps tell us what is this beekeeping?
Hello, good evening. My name is Keith Mageza. I was born in Johannesburg. I still live in Johannesburg. I went to high school at Maripi up to 1969, where as a child, I saw somebody sitting in a room full of bees without any problems. And that image has remained in my mind forever. I never bothered about bees until around 2005, when I met a comrade of mine who had gone to exile and came back a beekeeper. And I was influenced, and I didn't start until around 2014, when I started collecting one box there and one box there, and taught myself bees. And then I went to a course on beekeeping. And then I started working with some guy from Zimbabwe. The two of us, I thought we were only two of us in the role of Johannesburg who were black. And now and again, we had problems like in Soweto. You find that bees in a school, and there's nobody in the whole big Soweto to help them remove those bees. And this time you talk about bees, everybody runs away. Tells you about bee stings. Even very erudite people whom you expect would understand you will always say, no, get away from those bees. I just got a message from one of us in the Maripi group saying to me, stay away from those bees. And then I thought, no, man, we had a problem here. I cannot be myself and a Zimbabwean guy, with due respect, is one of us. Only the two of us helping out when there are problems with bees. I should rather, to solve the problem, I should try and teach as many people as I can to become beekeepers. I then joined, through this guy, a friend of mine from Zimbabwe, the Southern Beekeepers Association in Johannesburg, a beekeeping association made up of about 200 people, as a way of finding ways of gaining experience with which to teach other people about bees. With time, I realized that it's not only about honey, it's about more of the other byproducts, if not the main product of the bees, which is the beeswax, the propolis, the royal jelly, and all those kinds of things. Then I realized that there was a wider value chain in beekeeping than just the honey. But then there's a shortage of us in the country who would be able to participate in the farming of the bees. So I thought I should start teaching people about beekeeping. Thank you.
How is it done? You have to build a house or what?
This is how it goes. The best thing to do is to get trained, because they will sting you. And they don't sting because they feel it's a good thing to sting. But when a bee stings you, it's a suicide mission. When a bee stings you, it dies. So it's total commitment for it to sting you. It must be pushed to a point where there is no alternative. Initially, once you get the training, you can then buy what we call a hive. There are different types of hives. I know in South Africa, they use the Langstroth because it's an American thing. If you go to places like Zambia, they use the Langstroth. They also use the log hive. Basically, it's just a piece of wood dug on the inside. They take the inside out, they make a little hole, and then hang it up in a tree. And then bees, what we call a swarm, will go into that box and start building the comb, mamapo, and eventually fill that comb with babies and honey. You can do one of two things. You can either buy the bees from a bee farmer or somebody who supplies you with the bees, and they will sell you something called a nuke, which is half a hive.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can transfer your bees from half a hive, the nuke, into a proper hive, which takes, well, the British one takes 11 frames, or 11 frames. Your bees will work, but you need to do what we call hive inspection. You need to check them because they are being managed. You don't want them to disappear. If your colony, the number of bees in the box, what we call the brood box, which is their home, that's where the queen does everything. By the way, in bees, there's only one mother, which is the queen.
Okay.
And the queen, during the summer times, like this time of the year when our season is starting, she will be laying between 1,500 to 2,500 eggs every day.
Wow.
Every single day. And as a result, the colony quickly becomes big. Now, if there's not enough space, the bees will then decide this place is not big enough for all of us. So some of us have got to leave. So they'll take one of the queen's eggs and build it up to produce a queen. Now, an interesting thing here is, I think this is where we as human beings will need to learn something from nature. When they form a new queen, they starve the old queen, not to death. She goes on a diet.
Okay.
So she becomes smaller and she can fly, because generally the queen doesn't fly. She only flies at certain times. First, it's when she's going to mate and when she is swarming. She doesn't make the decision to swarm. It's the colony that decides this place is too small, we need to move. And then they'll produce half of the hive will go with the old queen. And they will sit on a tree somewhere and send some trees scouts to go and look for a suitable place where they can go. We as beekeepers, we become smart. We collect that swarm. Rather than they go far away, we collect that swarm and then put it in a hive. And the new queen will emerge. Sometimes you may find that in one hive you have probably 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 queens being produced at the same time. Number of things can happen. You as a beekeeper, if you don't do anything, you might lose all of those bees, because the first queen that is produced will take part of the bees with her. We call that the primary swarm. And then the second queen will take another group. And your colony is getting smaller and smaller and smaller to a point where it might no longer be viable. Then you've lost that. But the new queen will then fly on a particular day when it's nice and suitable. She'll fly to an area where there are boys, not from her home, but boys from another home or other homes. She'll fly to that place called congregation zone. She gets there, she'll mate with about 15, maybe 20, maybe 25 tops. And she'll collect all the sperms she'll ever need during that maiden flight, what we call mating flight. And every male that mates with her is a dead male. When it finishes its work, it dies.
Oh, interesting.
So again, mating is suicidal.
It's a serious business.
But that queen will then return home. The first few days, she'll be erratic in laying eggs. She may lay 2 or 3 eggs in one cell, but eventually she'll start to lay properly. And there's a pattern she will follow. And the colony will start to grow again, because she will be laying almost like the mother did, between 1,500 to 2,500 eggs every day, and the colony will get bigger and bigger. Now, this is when I say it's something we should be learning as people. When your children grow, what do? They have to get out of the house and go and look for their own places. Bees don't do that. They say, I am experienced, you stay home, I'll go and find my own home somewhere.
It's a very interesting story. Some people are contributing a lot to our community through these bees. What would you love to do?
At the moment, the biggest challenge is land. However, in the rural areas, there is land there which is neglected, which is unused. Beekeeping does not want you to have a big piece of land to be able to start your business. A small piece of land, big enough, maybe an acre or so, you can place your bees there and be able to make a living.
Yeah.
So, whereas, complaining about land to farm crops, big crops, beekeepers usually ask for small corners of people's farms to place their hive. 10 hives, I don't know how much it can make. We can work it out. But I think there could be some socioeconomic benefits out of it. Also, would be increasing the market. The market would benefit a lot from the products that come out of it. For instance, they say we are only producing 15,000 tons, I think, of honey in South Africa. We need about 30 to 40,000 tons of honey. And there are no beekeepers to supply that difference, that 25,000 tons of honey. There are no people to supply that. Whereas we do have spaces from which we can produce that maybe 10,000 tons more, and there could be having opportunities to do pollination of the farms in the areas around Limpopo or wherever else out there in the farmlands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mageza. I wonder if ever there is someone with questions or comments.
Thank you, Gogan Elder. Sometimes or always, when there is a thunder, there is something happening to the bees, or there is a connection of them drinking the honey and things like that. Can you explain more, Mr. Mageza?
When bees are threatened, they always want to moving away from the danger.
Yeah.
It's a flight or fight instinct. They prepare to leave. When there's fire, for instance, they swallow the honey so that they can leave. Ants always attack beehives because when there's a lot of honey, the ants want that honey too. And various other predators. The thunder that you're talking about is a threat of fire. So indeed, they do swallow the honey and prepare to leave.
So I'm not sure why it happened much with the thunder, because if their ants are there, it hardly happened compared to when there is thunder.
The fight or flight response. Bees, when are heavily threatened by fire or rain, sometimes, particularly if there is thunderous, porous rain, or when they are going to swarm, they do exactly the same thing. They gorge themselves with as much honey as possible. Will have something in them that will keep them going for the next 4 or 5 days. And if they go to, for example, when they were swarming and they find themselves a place, the place will be derelict, will have nothing in it, just a hollow. They have to start oozing out wax from their wax glands to make the honeycomb first, before the queen can start to lay. So there's a lot of work. And the honey that they will have taken at that particular time is going to be like the foundation of what they are going to do out there.
Thanks for your explanation.
The shamanic ways of the bee. I think what you're talking about has got some shamanic connotations, which I'm very interested in. In fact, I'm interested in understanding how we understand and interact with the bee. To me, it is very, very important. All what we do as beekeepers is a scientific understanding of how they behave, and we try to make them work to our advantage by understanding them.
And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Sister Elta and the panelists here. We thank very much the clarification of the hives, and so I read from the books, but I've never had someone who's seen someone who's taken care care of the bees. What is it's happening when you hear people say, okay, they've killed the queen to save the hives? What's the motive behind that?
As a beekeeper, you may find that your colonies are extremely aggressive. Now, when you have an aggressive colony like that, you have two choices. One is to do the most sacrilegious thing you can do to bees, petrol them. And when you petrol bees, what you do, you take petrol, you put it at the bottom of the hive, and you seal them. And within 5 minutes, they'll all be dead. But in other areas, what you do, you look for the queen, get the queen and kill the queen. When you kill the queen, the bees will then try to produce another queen from the eggs of the dead queen. So within 2 weeks, you go back into the hive, look for all the queen cells that these have produced and destroy them. At that point, there are no eggs in that hive anymore for them to try and make a new queen. So what you will normally do, you go to another hive which has got a very good queen. You take a frame with eggs and young brood from that frame, from that colony, and put it in the colony which you have made queenless. They will do the same. They'll take those eggs and produce queens out of those eggs. And eventually you'll get a queen that is well behaved. But for the next 6 weeks, your bees will still be as aggressive as possible. And the reason being, during the summer, that is when at the height of honey production, the bees will live for about 42 days, which is 6 weeks roughly. So that population of the old queen will take about 6 weeks to die off. And the bees that will have been produced after you've destroyed that queen or after the new queen started laying will be, because it's the queen that determines the behavior of the bees. So she'll have passed on her new genes, her good genes, and therefore your colony will become easy to handle. And that's because they will have bred the queens to a point where they are almost stingless. Well, they don't even have, no, they are not stingless, but they don't have the desire to sting at all.
Mr. Mgiva?
What type of environment or climate that you need to have bees? That's the first question. And the second question, to start up a bee farming, what do we need and how much can it cost to do that? Thirdly, what are the risks and how can you mitigate those risks?
The climate that you want, I mean, has to have a lot of forage, a place with a lot of forage. Forage means a lot of vegetation, okay? There are places where there's vegetation right around the year, but there are also places where vegetation changes from time to time. For instance, in South Africa, yeah, there are people who move their bees from place to place depending on the kind of climate at a certain time, at a certain season. So the main thing here is vegetation. Vegetation for forage is the main determinant for beekeeping, because bees live off flowering plants. So wherever there are flowering plants, then the bees will thrive in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
The investment in the bees in South Africa, the beehives that we use mainly here are called the Langstroth hive. The Langstroth hive, if you buy it from the people who make them, unless you make them yourself, if you buy them, they would cost you about 1,000 rand, 1,100 rands each. That is a hive with what they call a super. Then you have to buy the uniform, which is your bee suit, which will cost you around 1,800 rand in today's terms. Then you have some tools around, like the bee tool, and you need PPE, basically, the main one being the bee suit. Then to be economically viable, you'd need around 40 hives, I think, to be commercially viable. If you know how to manipulate the hives, like having supers on them, maybe 1 super, 2 super, 3 supers going up. These are things that you have to learn by going to a course to see how viable it would become to you. You have to understand the mathematics.
Beekeeping is highly labor intensive, particularly if you're going to have a lot of hives. So you'll need to have someone to help you. This is where job creation comes into play. They will help you to inspect your hives. You need to know about bee diseases. If you're going to be a commercial bee farmer, talk to fruit producers. So at a certain time of the year when the fruit trees are blooming, they will rent a certain number of hives from you to go and pollinate their product. That is money coming your way. So job creations are there. It's just, it needs unity. It needs us not to work individually, but to work as a unit.
Thank you, Tate Chilwane. Now you propose that we should form an association, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So if I've got enough land, can I just combine the two? That is bee farming and fruit production as well. Like say, for instance, if I can plant macadamia for nuts or something else, can I do that and make it one orchard with both bees and fruits?
Yes.
Oh, yes. That was one of the things I had in mind. If we have, say, 6 or 7 hectares of land, put fruit trees on that, just fruit trees, one specific type. Let's say it's oranges or citrus or peaches or whatever. And then when they start to produce flowers, you put your hives in the middle. The honey you're going to produce will be based on the plants that you have, the trees that you have. I think that will be the best thing you'll have done for yourself. Because then you don't have to transport your bees from their location to where the trees are and back. They will be right in the center of your orchard. We in Africa, we have a tree of life called moringa. If you can grow hundreds of moringa trees and get moringa honey, and then find a university that will be prepared to analyze the qualities and the efficacy of what is in the moringa tree, I think we can challenge the Manuka honey.
Manuka honey is a PR honey, public relations honey. I think South Africa has got very good honey. We just don't propagate it properly. We don't talk about it well.
Okay, Vincent.
Can you talk a little bit more about the applications of this honey and the byproducts thereof?
Number one, honey is very, very medicinal. That's another medicine for hay fever. Add your champagne yeast in there and make something we call mead, which is honey wine. You can take that, that mead and distill the mead to produce, I don't know whether you'll call honey vodka or honey whiskey, or whatever you want to call it. In Ethiopia, they produce beer from honey.
Is it what you call Taj? The Ethiopian one is called Taj. Yes. I would recommend that he gets a book. It's called Beekeeping in South Africa.
I'm inspired. I do want to learn. The first thing impressed me is that candle. That candle. I want to learn how to do it. Oh, where I'm staying, there is a man who is having these bees, but it's for witchcraft.
Oh.
Yes, when you make mistake, he will send those bees to come and sting you. I learned something good about the bees. And I was very much afraid because of this thing. The bees.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are protective clothes for them.
Definitely. It is highly secure. The only way the bees will get out of that observation hive is if somebody smashes it. It will be a very important thing to destroy the myth about the danger of bees. And the only way you can destroy that myth is for them to touch that glass. The bee is just on the other side of the glass. Just use them to enthuse people, to say this is what bees are. Rather than run away from them, come to them.
However, I'll request for a sample of financial projection.
I would suggest that maybe as you go through the course, most of those questions will be answered.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to do it alone.
Yeah.
So if we are together, we are supporting each other. We can as well say we are doing one farm, but even a very good quality. So that was my proposal on way forward. Okay. Thank you so much and have a safe journey home. Check, this will be on YouTube maybe next Sunday. And then just Google Kokwana Elta on YouTube, subscribe on the channel, and then you can read and listen to so many educational videos there that will take you very far. So stay blessed and have a safe journey home. Bye.